This week, we bring you music from a short-lived company that got its start on the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive. This is Pixelated Audio Episode 4, and we're talking about Zyrinx.
Welcome back to another episode of Pixelated Audio, a show where we talk about retro gaming history and focus on video game music. I'm Brian, and with me is James.
Hey.
And the song you just heard was Carousel from Sub-Terrania for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive.
I've been looking forward to doing this topic for a while now.
Yeah, no, it's been on our minds, and I'm glad we're finally getting to it.
And the music that's coming up is really good. We could really do a whole series just on the music.
Oh, totally, yeah. So anyways, let's go ahead and break down what we're going to be covering today.
Yeah, so this episode, we're going to showcase some music from a Danish company called Zyrinx and kind of talk about them and the brief life they had in the 90s.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with Zyrinx, you're not alone because they didn't really produce a lot of games, and the ones that they did only appeared on the Sega consoles. But they really deserve some attention because of the technical accomplishments they were able to achieve.
Yeah, they were kind of pushing the hardware to its limits.
Yeah, nobody was doing anything else like it, even the big name publishers. So it's really cool.
So Zyrinx was founded in 1992 in Denmark, and their backstory is actually a really unique one. All their founding members were really active in the demo scene in the late 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and it consisted basically of two groups in the demo scene. There was the Silence, who are now a subsidiary of EA called DICE, and you probably heard of them from Mirror's Edge or the Battlefield games.
Right.
And then there's also the Cryonics, and they've kind of, fallen off the map at this point. But these are really talented guys already getting into it. So
yeah, so they started working on their first game for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive while still in Denmark, and then they relocated to Boston. And by 1998, Zyrinx had produced a total of 3 games before their publisher went bankrupt. And this really caused them to fizzle out as well.
But yeah, in their short 6 years, they had some pretty cool software for the Genesis and the Saturn.
Totally.
Yeah, so we're going to cover 3 titles this week from Zyrinx: Sub-Terrania, Red Zone, and Scorcher. And the composer for all 3 is Jesper Kyd, and we've talked about him before.
Yeah, in episode 2, we ended the show with a really awesome track that he did for AWS Pro Move Soccer. So yeah, go ahead and check that one out.
Yeah, and we could have easily done, episodes on just him and his career, but we think it's, important to look at Zyrinx as a company because it's a very specific period of history, not only for Jesper Kyd's career, but also for the development team and the games they produced.
Yeah, it kind of resembles that indie startup idea that's recently become more and more popular in the game industry.
Yeah.
So actually, let's get into Sub-Terrania, which is the first game on our list and the first game that Zyrinx produced.
So Sub-Terrania is a side-scrolling multi-directional shooter published by Scavenger in '93 for the Genesis and Mega Drive.
And in this game, an alien race attacks an underground mining colony, and you play as a pilot of an experimental attack ship. So basically, the main objective of this game is to launch a counterattack on the aliens while rescuing members of a spy group.
Kind of like a Choplifter for the Super NES or Genesis.
Right, and you also spend time collecting these parts for your ship called sub-modules that let you go underwater, and also, taking out aliens.
Yeah, but I don't think either of us made it, far enough to go underwater, though.
Right, I definitely only got to level 2. So your ship can move around in these mines in any direction by using the D-pad, but what makes it really challenging is that there's gravity. So if you're not using your thrusters, your ship will start to sink, and then you end up hitting the walls and taking a lot of damage.
Yeah, gravity is definitely not your friend for sure. Anyways, it's a pretty simple idea for a game, but they took it a bit further because they give you limited fuel and, shield and ammo and stuff. So even your weapons need this cooldown time to do the special multi-directional shot.
Yeah, this definitely made the game, a lot more difficult and caused you to be a lot more cautious and not wasting your fuel and ammo and stuff like that when you really need it. But it also added this really cool layer of complexity to the game.
Totally. And with those restrictions and the gravity aspect, it made it really hard to master the game's physics. But once you get good at steering and, feathering that thruster, it's really, really fun.
Yeah, and the controls were actually customizable as well, so you could really figure out a setup that worked best for you.
Yeah, I played with the standard kind of control scheme, so.
So did I.
I could see how that would help because you can assign up on the D-pad instead of using a button for your thrusters.
Right, and the game itself really isn't that long with only 10 levels, and I've actually seen speedruns done in about 10 minutes, but, obviously that's someone that spent a lot of time, a lot of time playing this game. So your average player, though, is going to really just chip away at the game and get a little bit further each time they play.
Yeah, so I think it's time that we go ahead and start some music from Sub-Terrania. First, we have Crystal Space, and then following that, we're going to play Enemy Mines, and then Last Level. So let's get those started.
So that was Crystal Space from the first level, Enemy Mines, which I believe is from the fourth level, and Last Level, which I'm not quite sure where that one falls into place. And those are all from Sub-Terrania for the Sega Genesis, composed by Jesper Kyd.
Yeah, so what do you think about those?
Those are really some great examples of Kyd's music. I mean, he's so good. And that first track, Crystal Space, is one of my favorite tracks from all this entire album.
Yeah, I know you were really adamant about making sure that gets into the first block. So
right.
No, it's awesome. All the stuff he's done is amazing. And at this point, we've only had 3 tracks that we played, or 4 tracks now with that intro. Mm-hmm. And you already, I'm sure all of you guys can really get a sense of his music,
and his style.
And his style, yeah.
Yeah, it's very kind of it has like a very gritty industrial feel to me. I almost can like imagine people like banging away on like hammers on metal and stuff.
Yeah. Enemy Mines.
Yeah, Enemy Mines is another one of those great tracks that it starts off really cool, and then that bass really comes in, that the percussion and stuff like that.
It takes a second to start up, but it goes wild with that drum and bass kind of breakdown area about a minute or so in. No, yeah. I love that track.
Yeah, I mean you really get to start to see like how this is really a great beginning to a career for him. I mean, this is one of the first games that he worked on, and very early in his career, and he had such a definitive sound to his music.
Yeah, and Last Level, again, all this stuff has that demo scene feel to it. It really sounds like it could be on the Amiga, and it's just great stuff.
Right, and it's great music for the Genesis, which is a system that was kind of known for having a certain kind of sound to it, and this it uses that sound to its advantage instead of its disadvantage.
Right. So a little bit about the gameplay. I spent few hours playing the game. I didn't get super far. I got into the 4th level, but it's brutal. It's really they don't hold your hand. They don't give you a lot of guidance on what you're supposed to do. There's right when you before you enter the first mission, or each mission, you get like this breakdown of here's your objective, here's where everything is.
Yeah, it shows you the map and where things are at.
But then, as soon as the level starts, you're on your own. You just kind of have to figure it out.
Yeah, there's no like HUD or anything for you to view. So you kind of have to remember where everything was placed at on the map and what your objectives are.
Yeah, the first area is that really sink or swim level, right? Because, you fly around, you don't really know where you're going, and then you're still getting a feel for the controls.
Right.
And I remember going to the right after you start, and there's this huge robot there, and he's got like these rock'em sock'em arms that
and they
reach way out.
Yeah, they extend out and punch you.
So. You already don't have a lot of room in the caves to or the mines to move around.
Yeah.
So
you pretty quickly find out that even just barely bumping a wall you take damage. So with these crazy controls, it really starts you off kind of like you said, sink or swim.
Yeah. So with that robot there, you had to just wait for that moment and just book it through, but. I don't even remember, I think you can destroy him pretty easily, but at that point I was just running to the next objective. So.
Yeah. Well, and you're used to a different kind of set of controls. So even sitting there and shooting him, you start sinking. So you don't have a lot of room. So it really is, you get the hang of things before you can really start killing people. It's kind of just let me fly around and avoid things in the beginning.
Right. So level 2 actually introduces the major bosses and stuff like that. You get that 3-headed, alien that shoots,
he's got that scorpion tail,
and when it snags your ship with that that tail snags your ship, it whips you and throws you off into the mine somewhere. So it's hard to go underneath him and shoot him without getting hit by that, but at the same time you have gravity factored in, so
it's easy to stay below him instead of beside him. And it introduces the rail system too that is pretty neat. If you can go to the top of rail, you can ride a rail kind of up and down and not have to worry about sinking or using fuel, but you're kind of limited. You can't really move anywhere but the rail goes, so if the boss comes at you, sometimes you just you're going to take damage, so
you're out of luck.
So yeah, Jesper Kyd.
Such a solid and consistent composer.
Right. And I mean, he really hasn't produced anything that isn't, amazing. And he's got a really long list of great titles that he's composed for. Let me check here. We have Borderlands, Assassin's Creed, Hitman, as well as Kane and Lynch, MDK2.
Oh, it's one of my favorites.
Oh, I know. And he's got Forza, The Adventures of Batman and Robin for the Sega Genesis, and Amok for PC and Saturn.
Yeah, I'm glad you threw Amok in there because even though he did the music for it, some people believe that it's a Zyrinx game, but it's actually an other development team under Scavenger called Lemon.
Right.
And so we don't have anything lined up for that, but the music is top notch.
Right, and that's definitely a game we're going to get to at some point for sure.
Totally.
Anyways, he grew up in Denmark and got his first gig in the console world on AWS Pro Move Soccer for the Genesis, like we mentioned in our soccer episode.
Right.
And when Kyd relocated to Boston with the rest of Zyrinx, that's when he did the music for the games that we're playing today. But when the company died off and the rest of the team moved back to Denmark, he decided to set up a couple of studios of his own in New York called Nano Studios and Deftronic, both working as a freelancer.
Yeah, and his time at Zyrinx was pretty amazing.
For sure.
He wrote the sound driver for the games, and it's kind of what distinguished them from the other stuff we heard on the Genesis at this point. For example, the Genesis standard sound is rocking out at 11 kilohertz, but with the sound driver he did, it's this really extremely clear sounding stuff at 44 kilohertz.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
Yeah, it's just a really big jump in quality.
And all these guys from the demo scene came together to make such a unique and talented team, and Kyd's work on the sound system was really his way of contributing to that.
Yeah, and I read that he lives in Burbank, California now. But anyways, if you want to know more about him, he has his own personal website at jesperkyd.com, and that's JESPERKYD.com. So definitely check that out, and there's links to purchase his stuff. And
Right, so let's move on to the next set of tracks. First we have Funky Rider, Start Sequence, and then Underwater. So let's play those and we'll be right back.
composed by Jesper Kyd. That was Funky Rider, Start Sequence, and Underwater. The part I've yet to experience.
But at least we know that once we get there, the music is awesome.
Yeah, so anyways, that's from Sub-Terrania for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive. What are your thoughts on Funky Rider? I know that for me, that it's my favorite track.
Yeah.
It's definitely my favorite track of the whole album because it starts off and you don't know where it's going because it's the instruction screen, I believe, between levels. And it sounds like this kind of typewriter computer thing going off. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden the music just kicks in. It's just so
right. Is this where it's
awesome.
telling you like the kind of like the mission brief?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, and it's got that really cool stereo sound to it. And, it's just a...
Yeah, you better be listening to this with headphones.
Yeah, if you haven't, then definitely rewind it, pop on some headphones because it's
start
totally
over.
worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, because even, me and you are listening to these, ahead of time, just so we can, remember before we talk about them. And we have our headsets on and we're just rocking out in here. And it just sounds so good. So I, definitely make sure you're listening to it in all of its glory.
Right. And I mean, and these tracks are so great. Like they have such a range of sound within each song that it feels like he's really pushing it to the limit of what the sound can do, which is really great.
Yeah. It reminds me of Hybrid or Prometheus, one of those, very electronic bands. You probably don't know them, but it's like if Paul Oakenfold was playing music and video game music. So,
right.
But Underwater, I love that track too, and I'm glad we put it in because it has that really like long, like almost like a sonar kind of like pulse sound that kind of fades in. It's very long, and then it cuts out, and all you hear is this like kind of dee in the background.
Right. And I felt like the song had a lot more of a dense feel to it than some of the other tracks that kind of gave me that feeling of being underwater in certain parts. Because I know in the level you're not completely submerged through the whole level. Like part of the like underwater or the cave is like partway underwater, so you kind of pop in and out. So I felt like the music really fit with that, where it made me feel like in certain parts that like when you're underwater, you kind of you have that extra sound,
that extra layer. Yeah. Anyways, let's jump forward 2 years and move on to the next Zyrinx title.
Published by Time Warner Interactive, in 1994, the Sega Genesis is graced with what really is a technical marvel called Red Zone.
Yeah, you take control of an Apache attack helicopter, and this mad dictator is, I'm just going to read the back of the box.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, let me bring it up here. Okay, it says, you have 24 hours. Madman Ivan Redovitz rips off an arsenal of USSR nuclear weapons and threatens to transform the world into a radioactive desert. Let's see. As the leader of 3 covert commandos, you must pilot the AH-648 Apache fighter chopper and traverse the underground bunkers to destroy the nuclear madman.
Really sounds like your typical Save the World storyline.
Yeah, not the deepest of plots, but it doesn't really matter much here. It's really more about how they presented, the game and everything together as a package.
Yeah, right when you start the game, there's this really cool video cutscene of a dictator pounding his fist and going crazy, and things like missiles moving around and tanks getting ready. And even though it's just in red and black, it's not really anything that we've seen before, especially on Genesis hardware. Yeah,
and the same can be said for the gameplay. You control your helicopter around in this top-down 3D environment, and the camera rotates with the direction that you're facing. Mm-hmm. The landscape's pretty bland, but the objects, they have this perspective to them. So when you move around, you can kind of see these objects change as well, and it looks pretty cool flying around.
And another thing that I thought was really cool about this game is on the right side of the screen, you have this HUD that shows your helicopter. And as it takes damage, the different areas of the helicopter highlight showing that they're damaged. And this can really change the way that it flies. So, for example, if you get hit too many times on one of the sides, it can really cause your helicopter to start to drag and really limit your maneuverability.
That's one of the things that I liked about the game a lot, and I noticed real quick because the game's difficulty is so high.
Yeah, this game is really difficult, and it's just a really cool feature. And really, the game takes place mostly in the helicopter, but there are some on-foot combat parts in certain areas.
Right, and it's still top-down. It kind of resembles, I guess, the closest comparison is like something like Smash TV, right?
Right.
And you have 3 characters, each with unique weapons and only 1 life.
Yeah, I mean, when they die, they don't come back, so they're gone forever.
Yeah, and so you walk around shooting enemies. Some are mission-based, and like, for example, in the first level, you have to go on foot and pick up like this disc or something.
It's not really anything spectacular, but it is a nice change of pace to get out of the helicopter. So first up, we have title music, then select screen, and finally spinner. So let's have a listen, and we'll be right back.
That was title music, select screen, and spinner from Red Zone for the Sega Genesis, and again, composed by Jesper Kyd.
Really, that first track title music, it does exactly what it's supposed to. This is the song that makes me think of Red Zone when I hear it.
Yeah, no, I love that song. It has those really, I don't know how you say it, like dissonant harmonics and stuff. It, like a computer is, kind of crunching away, sitting there, crunching numbers or something like that. It's really cool. Like, I like the song a lot.
Right, yeah, and you can see that his style that we heard in Sub-Terrania transfer over into this new game to where it still has that same kid feel, but it's different.
Yeah, and selector screen, like you were saying, you see a lot in his music that he completely like drops the percussion, and
right.
And you get just this kind of kind of melody going on, and then he builds back up into the song, or even at like a different area of the song. Like it's this whole different kind of theme.
Right. And I was thinking of that like the songs almost kind of tell their own story with how they start out one way and they evolve into something different by the end of the song, but they still feel like one cohesive bit. Like,
yeah, and it
doesn't
loops.
feel like a different song. It still feels like it's one long like piece.
Yeah, and like I was saying, there's no loops in any of these tracks.
Right.
They're 100% solid all the way through. They have their own unique areas and stuff like that. So we're not, cutting anything out. We're not, cutting you short on this. There's a lot going on in this piece. So
right. And Spinner is kind of that same way. It really starts out slow, and he keeps almost adding
that
new
really
layers,
heavy bass, and
it's new layers, and then before you know it, you're hearing the full song, and it's built up to something really cool.
Yeah, again, really industrial, and it's like it would work in like Doom or something like a first-person shooter, creeping around like hallways and stuff like that.
Right.
So I want to bring up an interesting fact here. There was a pre-release beta version of the game Zyrinx worked on and released to the public domain called Hardwired. We uploaded a video on our YouTube channel, so you can definitely check that out if you want. It's pretty identical to Red Zone, but obviously more of like a demo showcasing like those unique technical aspects that they were able to achieve.
Yeah, and it's funny because it really captures that demo scene mentality, I think. Like hand it out to everyone and try it. And it's also interesting to note that the Hardwired beta uses the same music as Red Zone.
Yeah, so anyways, let's go ahead and get into our next set. Let's see here. We've got Night Mission, Walking, and Headquarters from Red Zone. Again, really awesome stuff, so let's get those fired up.
You just heard Night Mission, Walking, and Headquarters from Red Zone on the Sega Genesis from Jesper Kyd.
Oh man, again, I sound like a little kid when I say this, but oh man, he's so awesome.
Yeah, no, he's really awesome, and I really love that Night Mission track. It's really, really good. And it's actually pretty funny that when you go to the title screen for Red Zone, you can actually play all the music right from the title screen.
Yeah.
So yesterday when I was playing the game, getting ready to record this episode, I wanted it to be nice and fresh. And when I got done playing, I decided, I'm going to just pop on some music. And I put on Night Mission and went around, cleaning and doing different things. And so it played for like an hour to an hour and a half. And I was just loving it. Like I didn't get tired of it at all.
That's awesome. Yeah. I don't want to sound like a broken record or anything, but all of those tracks, like I feel like I should, I'm watching this Amiga demo and like I should be seeing like text bouncing up around the screen with like credits and shout outs and stuff like that. It's really awesome.
Right. And the walking track, it has a little bit of a different feel.
It's a lot slower pace.
Yeah. It is a nice change of pace from that really hard bass line. And it kind of feels a little bit more dramatic and stuff like that from some of the other like hard hitting songs.
Right. And it still has that, really cool stereo effect to it that's going on. So Headquarters.
That one also has a really amazing stereo effect. I mean, throughout the whole song, it's got this back and forth kind of like echo sound.
I love that laser pulse that, is going off. Like it's almost like it takes place of like a crash cymbal or something like that. And they're using that to make it more like a futuristic sound. And I love that track. It's really cool.
No, it's a really good one, and it's really good on the headphones, like we were saying. So
yeah. Anyways,
so really, that wraps up Red Zone. Is anything else?
No. I mean, it's sadistically hard. So if you're up for it, go give it a shot, I guess.
Yeah. So the last game that Zyrinx did was it takes a little bit of a departure from the 16-bit consoles and moves on to the next gen of gaming, so to speak.
Right. Zyrinx released Scorcher on the Sega Saturn and PC in 1996, and the Saturn had already been out for about a year in North America and Europe, so it kind of made sense to move forward to the new system.
Yeah, but originally the tech went into a game that was designed for the 32X, but by then it just worked out better to opt for real 3D hardware.
Yeah, and I was looking at the game manual, and it kind of explains the story. Basically, war and pollution have taken out most of humanity, and the larger cities are basically now wastelands. So these special speed bikes, and that's a direct quote from the manual, they were created to quickly get from city to city along the highways, which apparently created this sport known as Scorcher.
So it takes place in the year 2021.
And if that's true, we better start building our speed bikes now.
Yeah. If you're familiar with Wipeout, it's kind of their answer to the futuristic high-speed racing. And you fly around on these tracks on a motorcycle and
special speed bike.
Right. That's surrounded by a force field. But you can also jump to avoid pits and whatever else is in your way.
Yeah, it's got 6 playable tracks. There's the Dump, the Suburbs, Tunnels, Radioactive Waste, Downtown, and the Spiral. And they all kind of play like a roller coaster.
Right, and with the high speed of the game, it creates a little bit of a problem since there isn't much of a draw distance, but the game itself has really good graphics.
Yeah, it's not bad, but it had some mixed reviews. They all pretty much said like the same thing. It's got these incredible graphics and the music is awesome, but it doesn't really distinguish itself from, other stuff out at the time.
I can see that.
The Saturn already had High Octane, Cyber Speedway, and Wipeout, I think, by this point.
The reviews that I was looking at all really love the music. So by now, you guys should expect that it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than Jesper's Genesis stuff, though.
Yeah, a little more on the techno side, but we're going to play Suburbs and Radioactive Waste, which are both tracks from the Sega Saturn version. So let's get into some Scorcher.
You could easily have played those in a club and nobody would ever guess they're from a video game.
Yeah.
That was Suburbs and Radioactive Waste for Scorcher for the Sega Saturn, composed by Jesper Kyd.
Right off the bat, you can feel that techno feel to the song. That it still feels like a...
It still feels like his song.
Yeah.
It doesn't, even though... I think why it's such a departure from what we heard on the Genesis is that he really wanted to explore this new hardware and limitation. Before he had those constraints of the Sega Genesis, the FM synth. So
right.
We get a much richer kind of play with, what he's trying to, show us. So
right. And I can see that this sound was probably pretty popular, the whole techno in the clubs and everything
especially
like that in the 90s. Yeah. I can see that this could be like a, something of the time where it just really fit into that time period. And
yeah, Radioactive Waste, he really loves those long, drawn-out intros, right? The music doesn't even really start up until like a minute in.
Right, but, and it's almost like he's fiddling around with it and trying different things, and then it kind of builds. And then once that the song really gets started, to me, it felt really dark and sinister and almost kind of made me feel like a futuristic Castlevania or something like that, like something set in the future.
Yeah, and so I got to mention that all the tracks in this song are like plus 15 minutes. They're all
there's nothing
very
short.
Long.
Yeah,
the longest one's like 21 minutes, and that's the title screen.
Right.
And so
who's going to sit there for that long? Right? Unless you really love this song.
It's pretty funny. But anyways, a little bit about the gameplay. I didn't spend a lot of time with the game. I tried it out a little bit. It's interesting because you have to, it does feel like, Wipeout, where you collect like these, certain things for a speed boost and stuff like that. But in this, you're collecting energy crystals for using your jump. Oh, okay. So it's kind of unique in that way, because if you don't have enough if your meter isn't like all the way, stacked up, and you haven't collected enough crystals, then you can't, jump over certain obstacles. So it definitely slows down the pace of the game. So really, that's kind of what, I got from it. And I thought that was the unique point. There's like turning left and right on the D-pad, but then if you hit up and right, so if you go to like a diagonal, you get this hard turn. So it kind of makes you steer like a lot more sharp.
Oh, and okay.
It's like something that we'd see in another game that would probably do it with L and R, which they had on the Saturn, but they opted to kind of keep your finger on the D-pad and keep the speed high pace.
Right, and those L and R buttons were relatively new in the kind of the gaming world, so for Sega, so I could see them kind of like not really utilizing them off the bat.
And it's a racing game. I mean, you didn't really need a lot of buttons to do a lot of stuff. I mean, you pretty much just need steering and
gas and brake, and
that's about it. So
right, and with this game, if you really stack up a lot of the different elements, you can see that they were really going for like speed, like with the fast pace of the music, and I even feel that the low draw time was just, it really added to the intensity of the game, because you can't see too far ahead of you, so it made things feel faster.
Split second reaction time that you needed.
So it's just kind of a shame that it didn't really set itself apart from the other racing games out there.
Yeah, and the price, I'm not sure what it retailed for, but some of the reviews that I was looking at were saying like, it's kind of overpriced. So I'm not sure
what the price actually
was. I assume like a Saturn game at the time was $50-$60. I can't remember at all on that, but
So let's play one more track before we wrap up this game. This is the title music, and for whatever reason, it's pretty long, but we're just going to play a few minutes of it. So anyway, here's the title music from Scorcher.
That was the title music from Scorcher for the Sega Saturn. And yeah, that's the show. So let's quickly recap.
So from Zyrinx, we covered Sub-Terrania and Red Zone for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, and Scorcher for the Sega Saturn and PC.
Hope you enjoyed the show. We had a lot of fun, pulling these games apart and really diving into the history of Zyrinx.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example of how we envision the show. Basically, playing some games that have some great music and really deserve more attention than they got.
Yeah, they didn't have a ton of games, and they didn't really sell all that well either, but it was cool bringing them into the spotlight, into focus.
And where I feel like they fell a little short is that some of their games don't really feel fully realized, almost like they never left the demo scene. Maybe if they had kind of focused on pushing the hardware's limitations, they could have had someone else kind of take control of the creative ideas for the games and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's not to say that the company didn't leave its mark on the gaming industry.
Right.
They had a lot of really star players, So I'm glad we got to, take a look. Anyways, you can visit us online at pixelatedaudio.com. We're going to have the show notes and a list of all the stuff that we played. So, feel free to comment there.
And we're also on Twitter at Pixelated Audio. Check us out on iTunes and give us a rating or leave a review. We're also on Stitcher and a few other catalogs now. But it really helps us hearing the feedback of a possible direction we might be able to take the show.
Yeah, and so, we just did a Punch-Out episode and, one on soccer for the World Cup. And, check those out. A lot of good music there.
So taking us out from OCReMix is a track from Red Zone called The Broken Front. And it's done by a remixer by the name of DusK. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you in episode 5.